of leaving and coming back, just to slip away once more, by SeaSkate on ao3. No one said a thing when Rin left the cram school. They didn't talk about what had occurred in the woods that night between the exorcist in training and the demon king of Earth, or what they had learned about their classmate because of it. They didn't talk about how he was gone in the night before anyone could do a thing, or the fact that they probably wouldn't have stopped him if they had known, or the brother that he had left behind, the twin that shared the same lineage as the son of Satan. Not that the class talked of that either. They certainly didn't speak of how the only thing that Rin had left behind when he ran was the few things that he had brought with him to the dorms from the monastery, and his tail, severed by the blade of a kitchen knife so that the Vatican couldn't track the nephilim. They didn't speak of him at all, not until the night that he came back. It was early into the night when an alarm sounded in the office of the principal of True Cross Academy, a sound that was old and hadn't been heard for a very long time. It spoke of foreign gods. Mephisto stood, grabbing his hat from atop his desk as he looked on with curiosity at the grounds of the school so far below, enough so that a mortal wouldn't be able to clearly see the two boys standing just inside of the school gates, even though the demon knew that neither of them went there. At least not anymore. When he smiled, it was in a way that demon was sure would have made his father proud to see. It had been too long since they had seen some proper chaos after all. "Why are we waiting here like idiots?" the shorter of the two teens asked as a dog drew closer, the other boy seeing the animal immediately but saying nothing of it. "Exorcist may not be able to kill you, Chibi," the other boy said with a voice that was almost mean, though Mephisto felt only annoyance coming from the teen, "but I don't really fancy being run through with a sword this early into the night. Again. So standing in the middle of gunfire is fine," the shorter of the pair starts with an amused smirk, "but a sword is too much for you?" The taller of the two boys turned towards the other, grabbing onto a sliver of exposed skin at the teen's wrist that wasn't covered by the gloves that the redhead wore or the long sleeves of his dress shirt. Mephisto almost would have thought the moment somewhat intimate as the taller of the two held the other in their bandaged grasp, and in some ways it was. Not that either of the teens would ever admit it where another could hear, had it not been for the clear annoyance in each of their gazes. A clear need to be right. "Let's have you hold still like this and see how much you like a sword right now, slug." "Whatever, mackerel," the shorter boy growled as he pulled his hand from the other's grasp. "What a fascinating show." The shorter boy startled, jumping high at the sudden noise as a knife came to his hand and was pointed at the source of the commotion. The other boy only rolled his eyes, having seemingly expected this all along. The reactions were the only confirmation that the Demon King needed to know who was standing before him, and which they were. "Hello, Mephisto," the taller of the two greeted with a lazy voice, though the demon could see the amusement in the boy's clear blue eyes and too sharp smile. "Please do turn to your usual form before you give Chibi here an aneurysm. I would hate to have wasted a trip. Not all of us have keys that transfer space and time, you know." The shorter boy watched warily as the dog chuckled, an amusing sight for the Demon King, but his eyes went even wider when the demon completed the Nephilim's request, shifting into his humanoid form. The red-haired boy was quiet for a long moment as both demons glanced at him with nearly identical expectant yet bored expressions, but the usual reaction was not what they were met with at all. "Shit," the teen cursed as he looked between the pair, "you really are brothers, huh?" Mephisto looked to Rin, almost expecting to find some sort of horror on the younger demon's face at being reminded of this fact, or at being told that he acted like him at all. It wasn't something that most liked to hear, but the demon prince only shrugged as if unbothered by the other teen's words. "I've been brother to worse," the former cram school student said with a shrug as he looked anywhere but the other two present. It almost seemed as if the boy were shy, but Mephisto couldn't help but wonder if maybe the teen was looking for his twin. And wasn't that a thought? Mephisto knew that the twins weren't getting along too well at the end. Rin would have stayed if they had been. But even he hadn't suspected that it was so bad that the boy would rather acknowledge the demon that no one in either world trusted as a more fit brother than the boy's own mortal twin. And here he'd had thought that tonight was going to be dull, though the demon supposed that it couldn't be now with the nephilim before him and whatever the other teen was at the boy's side. "So, why are you here, little brother?" the Demon King asked, causing the younger boy to roll his eyes. "I need your help," Rin bit out, sharp nails tapping against skin in a manner that accidentally brought attention to the bandages lining the teen's arms, his entire body. Figured if anyone would know about possession it would be a demon. But it's not exactly possession, Mephisto knew as he looked at the older of the two teens, is it? No, Chuya all but snarled, anger flaring in his gold-tinted eyes enough that they almost looked alight with flames. But even with all the entertainment this could bring, Mephisto still couldn't help but observe. He seems intact, handling the power of the god well. I don't see what the problem is. The demon watched as his little brother huffed and was intrigued to see that he had expected this from the start. Habaki is sealed away right now, the bandaged teen explained, seemingly uncaring of the discomfort that it brought the teen at his side to do so, but Mephisto could see Rin tap his foot against the others. It's when the seals are released that the power starts to destroy his body as he loses control and destroys everything else. Mephisto almost grinned at the half-demon's words, wholly unsurprised that his little brother managed to find the one boy outside of the world of exorcists that could match his powers and knew what it meant to lose oneself to them. He didn't know who paired the two together, but thought that they might deserve a gift. This time the Demon King does grin. "I'll help you," he says slowly, watching the way that the smaller boy's eyes light up in a hopeful surprise that hadn't quite been beaten out of him by life yet, as Rin's only become colder and more calculating, suspicious. It truly seemed that whatever naivety the boy had possessed before leaving had been stripped from him in a brutal way, or maybe in several ways. At a cost. Now he was looking at two sets of hard eyes, a fact that was enough to tell him that the other teen isn't usually so naive as he had just appeared, only desperate. "Name it," Rin says firmly, and Mephisto knows in that moment that the halfling truly would pay anything for the other. He would even come back permanently if the Demon King so much as asked. It was a level of devotion that Mephisto hadn't seen in a long time, not since the man that had raised the twins as his own. "I will," Mephisto assures, enjoying how sharp the half-demon's eyes become as he already seemed to know what is coming next, had from the start, but was annoyed by it still, "but I would like to see this power first." The smaller teen looked ready to protest, but Rin spoke first. "Lead the way, big brother." A training facility, that was where the demon took them. Dazai stuck close to Chuya and Chuya close to Dazai as they walked through the halls of the cram school, neither willing to let the other stray too far in a place that should kill them both on sight. "Do you want him to fight the toad demon or something?" Dazai asked as the three stepped into the room that the giant toad was usually kept in during training for the first-year exorcist hopefuls, though it wasn't there at the moment. "Not quite," Mephisto said, his smile too bright for either of the mafiosos to believe it. Dazai had seen it in the mirror and on the boss's face too many times to count to ever think that it was genuine. The Demon King of Time and Space seemed to realize this as he let it drop with an equally unbelievable pout. "Ah, there they are." The trio stop as the doors on the other side of the room open and students start walking in, weapons in hand as they stop short at the sight before them. "How?" Chuya asks as the students stop as they notice the pair that they hadn't seen before. "The bastard didn't even make any calls?" The smaller mafioso asks, exasperated. Dazai shrugs. "He's crafty and always thinks 5 steps ahead. Must run in the family," the slug grumbled as he looks to the newcomers. There weren't many of them, but still enough to be a bit of a discomfort to the gravity manipulator. One girl had long purple hair and small brows of the same color, while another was blonde and stood at the former's side even as Poka brows didn't seem to particularly want her there. 3 guys stood together, one taller than the other 2 and sporting a punk look, another with pink hair that reminded the mafioso of the cherry blossoms that he'd seen in sand cut in half if they came too close, and the third was a short bald boy with glasses and 2 wide eyes. Behind the 5 students were 2 others standing a reasonable distance apart, one boy that was holding a puppet that seemed to mysteriously match the principal's general aesthetic and another teen that was taller than all the others and had the same eyes as Dazai. The exorcist in training, Chuya knew, the ones that had shunned the bandage waist and drove him to Yokohama. To the Port Mafia. He didn't know whether he should hate them or thank them for doing so. "You want us to fight the second-year cram school students?" Dazai asked, catching on quickly with the other demon's schemes. His voice sounded the same as it always did and was enough to draw a few startled gasps from those that seemed to recognize it among the exorcists. The blue-eyed one in particular. How dull, the teen remarked. What the hell, man? The punk called out as Chuya shifted closer to his partner, not trusting the way that the exorcists were beginning to look at the pair of them. And definitely not trusting the way that the one in the dark clothes instead of the school uniform like all the other teens seemed to be swaying as if he saw a ghost. Humans were always the most dangerous when surprised, Chuya knew from experience, having done some of his best fighting when his victims were still in shock, and the teens before him were definitely that. Shoo, Bon, Dazai said, a theatrical finger going to the demon prodigy's lips as he looked at the other teen as if they weren't worth the oxygen that it took to speak to them. The adults are talking. Rin, the blue-eyed teen choked out, his voice layered with surprise and a bit of anger too. Chuya noted both and knew that Dazai did too, and probably a whole slew of things that the gravity manipulator had yet to realize. That was just how the bastard worked, a survival instinct that he'd cultivated over time. Everyone within the mafia had it to some degree, that awareness that could be the only thing standing between life and death. Most had it before coming to the Port Mafia, as it wasn't a place that you usually joined if you had anywhere else to go, anywhere safer. At least in the Port Mafia, if you get injured or die, your sacrifice isn't just brushed off as something sad or a casualty of a war that you didn't know that you were fighting. As a mafioso, when you go down, the mafia retaliates tenfold. It was the loyalty that they held for one another, the exorcists on the other hand held none. Dazai doesn't look at his twin as he continues to look at the eldest brother in the room instead. What? Mephisto asks, his voice too filled with mirth for anyone to buy his supposed innocence. I need to see what I'm working with. Consider this your debt and put on a good show. You want us to fight all your little exorcists? Dazai asks, his brow raised high in disbelief. There's 7 of them, that's not exactly fair. And here I thought that you were strong and could take them, the Demon King said with a disappointed voice that neither mafioso believed, neither did any of the exorcists that were listening as well. I suppose I was assuming too much. Maybe too little, Chuya cut in as he took a serious look at the other teen and found nothing special about any of them other than the pair sporting some form of pink. Even he could realize that there was something off with the one with the dyed hair that was carrying the staff and the kid with the puppet. The slug here could easily take them all down in under 5 seconds just with a thought, Dazai said, his voice bored even as the other teen scoffed at his supposed hubris, though his twin felt only a coil of terror in his gut as he knew that it was anything but. Hell, the former exorcist in training continued, bringing his hand up for the others to see as blue flames coiled around it, flames that most hadn't seen in over a year, and Chuya had only seen to some extent when they cancelled out his ability. Even I could manage that if I was feeling ambitious. Let's see it then. The exorcists turned as a new voice entered the room, drawing the attention of those within it. Mississippi Shura, Suguro said with no small amount of surprise. The cram school students hardly ever saw their teacher outside of class, to see her now on a day that she wasn't supposed to be teaching was a rare thing. The elder exorcist only had eyes though for the boy that was supposed to be her student. If you're so confident in your abilities, then let's see what the old man's prized son has become, the woman said, drawing her sword, her voice harsh as she looked at the boy that had changed so much in just over a year. Yukio is right there, Rin said plainly as he gestured to the other twin in a way that could only be described as bored. You know that's not true, Yukio all but growled as he pushed through the crowd closer to his twin, though he didn't get as far as he liked as the small red head next to Rin stepped between the siblings, drawing the attention to himself for the first time. You weren't the one raised in the dark, and lied to about your own nature, Ryan reminded his twin with more emotion in his voice than he'd shown since walking into the room, though it still wasn't much. You weren't the one that believed he had a brother that cared for him only for them to point a gun at your head the next time you were alone together. No, Rin growled, his fangs flashing in the too bright light, you were the one raised to be the next him, the one raised to be human. Don't come at me with your inferiority complex. Quiet rallying the 4 eyes up, mackerel, the stranger said lazily, as unbothered by the exorcist as Rin was before. I'm supposed to be the one with the anger issues, you bandage waist. You're right, Rin agreed, his uncovered eye cold once more as he seemed to relax at the sound of the other teen's voice. It led to more than one exorcist questioning just what the relationship between the pair was. Besides, the son of Satan continued, we've still got a fight ahead of us. I suppose I should take my own advice and save such energy for our guests, Chibi. That's the spirit, boys, Mephisto said cheerily as he snapped his fingers and disappeared into a cloud of pink smoke only to reappear in a chair high above. Now let's see a good show, right? Yeah, okay, Dazai said lazily as he discarded the jacket that was resting on his shoulders carelessly to the side as if it were worth little more than the trash on the street. Yukio didn't know why, but the sight didn't set right with him. We're not fighting you, Yukio said, his voice sure as if even the idea were stupid. Why not? Rin asks blankly, his voice holding no emotion at all, something that it had only been like before when the teen had let down every wall and was left empty. It had only happened a few times growing up, the first time that someone had called him a demon being one of them, for a moment in that classroom when Yukio almost thought that Rin would walk into the gun, when the exorcist had first turned from him after finding out about his lineage, and if Shura were to be believed, when the Vatican was deciding his fate. It seemed to be a constant state now. You've never had a problem with doing so before. It seemed to be a constant state. I'll even limit myself if our brother will lend me a blade, the half-demon continued as he looked up at the Demon King. Of course, Mephisto said cheerily, what fun is a game without a few handicaps? He asked as he snapped his fingers and a katana appeared in Rin's hand. It seemed to be a constant state, except. Handicap my ass, the stranger said with a laugh that brought light to blue eyes that had been without them, you were trained by Ainsan herself this past year. And I still loose, the son of Satan whined as he laid his head on the shorter boy's shoulder. She's one of the best sword masters in Japan, I don't know what you and that fish brain of yours would expect. True, Rin conceded with a sigh, as he let the blade rest on his shoulder, I'd like to see her and the agency's president fight sometime though. The way I hear it, even the boss can't beat him, it always ends in a tie unless a third party is involved. I'm either going to have to retire or die before you become boss, the stranger grumbled beneath his breath, but Yukio heard it still. As did Rin. You wound me, partner, the older twin said dramatically. Sure I did, the shorter boy said with an almost fond eye roll. Yukio could only watch on in blatant confusion. Shame and Toad then? Rin asked as the pair walked to the other side of the room. You think they warned it? The stranger, Rin's partner, asked as if the question from the half-demon made any sense. Rin shrugged. I'd rather them not try to exorcise you. Careful, the stranger tainted as he slipped from view, someone might accuse you of caring. As if. Yukio still knew his twin enough to know that the boy cared very much. Well, exorcist, Rin said cockily as he held his blade out to them, we're supposed to fight, so let's get to it. Bon withdrew one of his guns with holy water within them and shot without hesitation, a year's worth of anger, frustration, and betrayal keeping him from holding back as he shot at the two teens, knowing at least one of them would be hurt by the otherwise harmless bullets. None of them hit though as Rin gazed seemingly lazy swipes of his sword and hit them from the air, dodging the ones that he couldn't. No one else noticed what else he had done at the time. No one but the teen behind him. The foxes came next, but were sent away by a flame-engulfed swipe of the borrowed blade. We do not get enough for this, one said as the pair of white spirit foxes ran off. Mike, maybe, not that it mattered. Enough of this, Shura growled as she pushed to the front and raised her blade towards the son of Satan. But Rin only smirked. It's up to you, Chuya. Course you would leave the work to me, bastard. When Rin moved out of the way, the exorcists were met with a sight that they had never seen before, as the stranger, Chuya, seemed to glow with a harsh red light that whispered of flames as small things floated around him engulfed in the same light. I'll go easy on you since you're just a bunch of brats, so be thankful. That was the last thing that they all remembered before the pain hit, as what they would learn were rubber bullets hit their skin at speeds fast enough to bruise for weeks, and unexpected enough to make them stay down for the rest of the short fight. If it could be called that. Only Shima remained standing, his staff having blocked the bullet meant for him. "You know what, I'm good," the exorcist stuttered out, his hands raised in surrender. Chuya felt wind rush past him from the fight between the two swordsmen and grinned, knowing that he couldn't leave even one the chance to decide and help. They could handle them easily, sure, but there would be no fun in giving them hope. That was a job left to a sadistic bastard like the bandage waist. "I'm not." A foot stomped down on the ground and gravity coursed through it, encasing the pink-haired teen and bringing him to his knees as he buckled under its weight. "Now I am." Chuya watched for a moment as Dazai battled the other sword user, their blades moving like extensions of themselves as they danced around one another. He always loved watching Dazai and Koyo fight in such a way, the lethal grace of it. Maybe it was because the other teen's heart is locked away within a blade that is bound to one day break, but he never seemed more himself than he was when he had one in his hand. It was a shame to help put it to an end as Chuya dove at the woman, knocking the blade from her hand just as she knocked the sword from Dazai's, leaving them both weaponless. A state that didn't last for long as the bandage waist pulled out a gun from beneath his shirt and pressed it to the dual hair-colored woman's head. "We win," he declared, finger on the trigger as he moved to stand next to his partner. "That's a real gun," Yukio noticed as he slowly brought himself to his feet as the shock wore off, looking at his twin as if seeing a stranger. "It is," Dazai confirmed coldly, tucking it back into its place. How? Dazai shrugs. "It's a pretty standard weapon for where we work." "Where's that?" Yukio asked, thinking of all of the places that had hired his brother only to fire him within the week, if he ever lasted that long. He didn't know what legal sort of place would allow for a minor to possess a weapon, other than for exorcism. "We're mafiosos." When Rin stands next to Chuya as he says this, they each look like monsters in their own right. It was then that Yukio realized that Rin hadn't even used his flames other than the little show at the beginning. Everything that they had just done had been learned skills. Monsters indeed. Mephisto grinned as he walked towards the door, beckoning the dangerous duo to follow him. They did so without question, knowing that they had paid the price required of them and would soon see if a solution was even possible for the gravity manipulator's problem. However, Dazai veered off to the side on the way out. Chuya let him, knowing that it wouldn't do anyone any good to get in the other teen's way. "I recognize that look in your eyes," Dazai said slowly as he stopped next to the pink-haired teen heading towards the opposite door as neither teen looked at one another, each facing the opposite direction. Still, the mafioso could assume what face the other was making. "I didn't before, but I do now. If the light grows too strong, just know that the wraiths of the night will be happy to consume it. For a price." "I don't know what you're talking about," Shima bit out, but Dazai only laughed, cold in a way that flames only ever were when they were so hot that you felt chilled being burned by them. "Of course you don't," the executive said with a too bright voice to be believed. "Come on Chibi," Dazai said, switching suddenly as if he had forgotten completely that the pink-haired teen existed at all. "Let's see if we can't tame a god." The exorcists could only watch as their former classmate ran off with teen at his side, each of them strangers in their eyes.